Alright, so welcome back to class. As you guys can remember, last class period, we read The Most Dangerous Game as a class. And then, at the end of that, I had you guys write in your journals how that story made you feel. What are some of the things that you guys wrote?
It made me feel very on edge. I was always wondering what was gonna happen.
Alright, and would you say that you liked the story or that you didn't like the story?
Thought it was very enjoyable, but I wasn't sure about the ending.
Alright, does anybody else have a different opinion? She was on edge. Yes?
I liked it a lot. Most class stories are very boring. Had a lot of action.
Yep, this is actually different than some of the other stories we've read. This story has a lot of action.
I liked it.
Can we get one more? How did this story make you feel?
Thought it was very interesting, except for the motives of the journal made me feel a bit on edge.
So-
They were sickening.
Yep. So, I mean, made you guys all feel the same way. What do you guys think that the author wanted you guys to feel when reading this book or after this story? Yep.
I think the author wanted us to consider what we would do if we were put in that situation. How scared would we be?
Yep, that's one thing that the author could have wanted. Somebody else have? Yep.
I think the author was just trying to entertain us with a good story.
Yep, that could very well be. It was a very entertaining story. But today we are going to talk about theme and how that has to deal with what the author wanted us to feel. Does anybody know what theme is? Yep.
The subject the story is about.
Yep, we've talked about theme in a couple different stories from the past. But today we're going to have, you guys are really going to be in charge of picking out the theme of this story. By the end of the story that I want you guys to be able to do these standards. So pretty much I want you guys to be able to look at the story and then figure out what the theme is and be able to support why you think that is the theme. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Alright, so first of all, we're going to have a volunteer come up and write on the board for me. Come on up. Here's the marker.
That was a good one.
It probably doesn't really matter about your penmanship because it's probably going to be better than mine. So what we're going to be writing up on here is different themes that you guys think you can find in the story. Does anybody have one to start it off? Right here.
Perseverance.
Perseverance. Okay. And why do you think that is the theme of this story?
Because Rainsford, he really perseveres through a lot of tough times.
Just get as close as you can. If it's not right, that's fine. So, can you say that again?
Hold on, let me. Oh, Rainsford he had to persevere through a lot of tough times.
What are some of those tough times? Name the first one.
When he fell off the boat.
Yep. And that wasn't even the start of it. Got even tougher, didn't it?
Yep, and then he had to swim back. That's a tough challenge, in the ocean. And then fell asleep, woke up, and then he realized he was with a killer. That's not a good situation. And then he was being hunted. That's a bad situation.
But of course he didn't give up.
He
and
persevered.
That's
And
very
guess
good.
what? He killed I forgot his name.
Ivan. Yep. Alright. So we got a pretty good start up there. And anybody have another one?
Violence.
Violence. And violence, could we say maybe war, violence together?
I think that's a great way to put it.
So why do you think that violence / war is a theme of this story?
Well, both characters had previous experiences in war and it
Well, I'm
affected them.
going to stop you there. That's almost getting into a different theme that we're going to talk about. I want you to focus on this one. I want you to focus on really the violence that the characters have in the story. And there are different types of war in the story.
Well, both characters are violent in that, well, the obvious one that Zareth wants to kill Rainsford and show how strong he can be.
Yeah, and we see violence even come, as soon as he gets on the island, he walks through and he sees blood on the leaves. And then we see it again when he's sitting in eating the soup. We see he has all the heads on the wall. And it's just kind of very a violent relationship between those two characters. Now, let's start talking about the other one you're starting. The effects of war. And continue with what you're gonna say with that, if you can remember.
Well, like I said, both characters had a past experience. They both fought in World War I, but they both took out their experiences. It shaped them in two different ways. Well, one continued to use his experience to hunt animals, while the other one, well, he decided that he would hunt humans.
Can you remember what their different experiences were?
Well, Zaroff, he first started off killing animals.
Well,
and then-
Zareth was Russian, correct?
Well, yeah, he does have a Russian name. so
Yep.
that makes sense.
He's Russian, so in World War I, he would have been fighting on the Russian side.
Yeah,
I
True.
mean, he lost.
Well,
could have
that-
put him through some
Debatable.
repression, that's why he wanted to kill some things.
well, it does talk about how his time at war was a little different than Ransford. Ransford doesn't really like the thought of war, and he really looks back at it as not the best time. Where Zaroff it really affected him differently, and could that have driven him towards the choice of wanting to borderline craziness, wanting to kill people? Because it does say he started off hunting animals, which you would say normal, but he wanted to keep going. So that's where we get the effects of war. Does anybody have another one?
Maybe the struggle for survival.
Struggle for survival. We can put that one down. And why would struggle for survival be a theme? While she's writing, can anybody else help her out?
Because we can play it into our lives and different situations we're in.
Yeah. Obviously, you guys aren't getting hunted on a daily basis, or I hope you guys aren't. But you can really tell how you have to do what you gotta do in order to survive. Was there anything else you wanted to say from the story? Why that's a theme?
Just because he was being hunted, so he had to do what he could to stay alive and
Mhm.
defeat the general.
Yep. Alright. I'm looking for one more theme. We got a pretty good list up there.
The hunter versus the hunters.
Yes, we're gonna do prey versus predator. Why is this a theme in the story?
At first, they're presented as equals, but eventually you see the difference between Zareth hunting Ransford and what both of them do to compete against each other.
Yep, and that's not the only relationship we see of prey versus predator. They actually talk about that a lot with the different animals. And they're first on the ship. Ransford and his friend are talking about whether animals are afraid when they're getting hunted. Do they know that they're the prey and humans are the predator, or do they not? Obviously, in the end, we find that Ransford obviously knew he was the prey, but in the end he kind of was the predator, and see how that relationship kept flipping back and forth. I'd probably say that this would be the main theme of the story, but obviously, as we've learned, there could be a lot. And that's gonna lead us into, there obviously can be a lot of different themes in one story, but there can be stories that share the same themes. I mean, there's a lot of stories out there, and they can all share different themes. So you can go ahead and take a seat. What are some stories of your favorite stories that you guys have looked back, or that you guys can remember, and name the theme of one of those stories?
Huckleberry Finn.
And what is the theme of Huckleberry Finn for those of us that have not read it?
I think racism would be a very big theme in the story.
Yeah, can you give us kind of a short definition of why?
Well, the slave Jim is often looked at as less than or an animal, and he's very comparable to Huck, the protagonist of the story, and they're comparable, but Huck is a 13-year-old boy, so it's very ironic that he would only have a grown man would only have the same rights as such a young boy.
Yep, that's a good theme. Did any of you two have a theme from one of your favorite stories? It could be a movie too. Movies also have themes.
Well, this is a movie and a book, but the book is better. Hunger Games, it shares the same theme as Prey versus Predator, and many switches all the time.
Yep, that's a good example of how themes can come together in different stories, and different authors when they're writing books can steal themes from different stories and put them in their work. Do you have one more?
I think the things they carried, I think that theme is loneliness and isolation, because it is about the Vietnam War, and it really shows the loneliness the soldiers felt throughout the war.
Yep. So I feel like we have a pretty good grasp on what theme is. And it seems like you guys know how to support your claim that that is the theme of the story. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our journals out, and we are going to do a journal entry. It doesn't have to be long, but what I want you to do is write a movie or a book, pick one of those out, and then choose a theme out of that. But I don't want you to use any of the ones that we talked about. So you have to choose your own story and just write a short journal entry into your journals. And that will be your daily points that you will get. And I also will look at those to make sure that you guys understood the theme and can look at the story and pick out textual support for theme. I'm done.
Can I